Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Johanna Chan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. The Consumer Council warns of cast iron cooking pots that can pose health risks. Mandatory quarantine is ordered for Cathay Pacific aircrew who stayed in the same German hotel as 3 pilots hit by COVID. And trading kicks off on the Beijing Stock Exchange. In its first in-person press conference in almost 2 years, the Consumer Council said cast iron cooking pots should be used carefully. Some popular brands were found to release metals exceeding international standards. Almond Lee reports.
Cast iron pots are popular among home chefs because of their stylish appearance and great heat conductivity and heat retention. But there are health risks. The Consumer Council tested 7 brands by cooking acidic food at a high temperature for 2 hours. 2 of the 5 brands that have an enamel coating released metals exceeding international safety levels. The made-in-China Bruno pot released 4 types of metal, including the carcinogenic arsenic, which was 16 times the European limit. The 2 pots without an enamel coating also released traces of metal. Iron released from this US-made lodged model was 54 times higher than the acceptable level.
As metal could accumulate inside the human body. If metal migrates from cookware to food during cooking, it might result in excessive metal intake and pose health risks. Arsenic, cadmium, and chromium compounds have been categorized by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as carcinogenic to humans, Group 1.
Tem, who heads the Research and Testing Committee, said people need not throw the pots away, but should avoid cooking acidic ingredients in them. All pots passed a heat retention test, but they do not heat up evenly. Bruno has a 191 degrees Celsius difference of the interior bottom when heated on an electric ceramic hob. The retailer has pulled the product off the shelves. Users are advised not to pour cold water into the pots right after cooking, as the sudden temperature change could cause the enamel coating to peel off. Almond Lee, HKIBC.
The Consumer Council also tested more than 30 brands of peanuts and nuts and found that nearly 95% of them are high in fat. The watchdog said peanuts and nuts are considered healthy snacks because they are rich in nutrients such as unsaturated fats and omega-3. But food processors add extra oil, salt, and sugar to improve taste. Excessive intake of the additives can cause heart and kidney diseases. A newly designated quarantine hotel for foreign domestic helpers is fully booked for the next 3 months. Online bookings of the Courtyard by Marriott in Sha Tin opened at 9:30 a.m., and all 500 rooms were snapped up in less than half an hour. The hotel opens its doors to the helpers on December 8th, charging them $650 per night with 3 meals included. Hong Kong today reported 6 imported COVID cases, all fully vaccinated with BioNTech. Authorities, meanwhile, ordered the mandatory quarantine of Cathay Pacific aircrew, who stayed in the same German hotel as 3 infected cargo pilots. Almond Lee has the details.
Health authorities have been trying to trace how 3 Cathay Pacific cargo flight pilots contracted COVID. They had all stayed in the Hyatt Regency Mines during a work flight to the German city of Frankfurt. 2 of them arrived on November 1st, while the 3rd pilot checked in 2 days later. The 3rd man said he didn't leave his hotel room and had no contact with his 2 colleagues. SAR authorities have alerted their German counterparts of a potential cluster at the hotel. In Hong Kong, Cathay Pacific aircrew who stayed in the same hotel on or after November 1st have to undergo quarantine. The measure also applies to other inbound travelers who stayed there during the same period. The order came as Hong Kong logged 6 imported cases today. All received 2 doses of BioNTech, and 5 of them contracted a mutated variant. Block 5 of Rambler Crest, the Tsing Yi home of 1 patient, has been slapped with a mandatory testing notice. Almond Lee, HKIBC.
police shoot a wild boar back into a hill after it was seen wandering in a public housing estate in Aberdeen. Acting on tip-offs, officers found the boar in a planter in Leitung Estate this afternoon. After spending 2 hours trying to catch the animal, they decided to drive it back into the hill. Yesterday, 3 wild boars appeared in Cyberport, but ran off before the arrival of staff from the Agricultural, Fisheries and Conservation Department. A rise in injuries caused by wild boars triggered a new policy under which the animals will be put down if caught in urban areas. An Education University student has been acquitted of assault on appeal after the court ruled that he was wrongly identified as the culprit. Cao Anlong had admitted committing a nuisance at Lokfu Station during an anti-government protest in 2019. The 20-year-old was found guilty of assaulting a police officer and was sent to a detention center. But appellate judge Juliana Barnes said the lower court mixed up Ka with another person who was also dressed in black and wrongly determined that the student had attacked a police officer. Ka has already completed his sentence. Bidding was brisk in the first round of an auction of Lunar New Year stalls in Victoria Park. The top price for a booth was $51,000, compared with just $10,000 last year, because vendors are expecting better business as COVID subsides. Annie Lau reports.
The annual auction of stalls in the Lunar New Year flower markets in Victoria Park is seen as a barometer of Hong Kong's economy. With COVID appearing to retreat, there were hopes that business at the fairs will be good, although dry goods and food will be banned for the second year in a row. The 2-day auction for booths in Victoria Park kicked off this morning with 175 stalls on offer. Seats at the Lai Chi Kok government offices were partitioned for the more than 100 bidders. After 23 bids, the prime spot near Tin Hau went under the hammer of $33,200, exceeding the base price by more than 6 times. Florist Lau Hoi To, who is known as the king of peach blossoms, believes business will improve as many Hong Kongers will stay in town to greet the Year of the Tiger on February 1st. He expects peach blossoms to cost at least 30% more. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department is also optimistic that turnout will be high as people have become more familiar with the Leave Home Safe app. Bidders will want that the fair scheduled for the week before the Lunar New Year could be cancelled if COVID worsens. Stalls in 14 other flower markets across the city will be auctioned off in the next 3 weeks. Annie Lau, HKIBC.
2 men have been taken to court for mention for allegedly kidnapping a cryptocurrency investor. The pair were accused of kidnapping a 39-year-old man earlier this month in Kowloon Bay, where they met to trade the digital currency Tether. The victim was beaten with a hammer and suffered several fractures in his limbs, while his family was asked for a ransom of $30 million. The 2 suspects and 5 others arrested in the same case were remanded until January. A man who allegedly bit off the left ear of former Pan-Democratic District Councillor Andrew Chu has appeared in court. Zhou Chen was accused of stabbing a couple inside a Taikoo Shing mall in November 2019. He allegedly attacked them after hearing them say "Liberate Taiwan." Chu then intervened and was bitten in the ear. Chen pleaded not guilty to 3 charges of wounding and 1 of assault. China's market reforms took another major step today with the opening of the Beijing Stock Exchange. It took just 10 weeks for the exchange to start operations after President Xi Jinping announced its establishment. Winna Wang reports.
With the sound of the bell, the Beijing Stock Exchange opened. The launch ceremony was hosted by the Secretary of the Beijing Municipal Committee, Tai Ti, and the Chairman of the China Securities Regulatory Commission, Yi Huiman. The mainland's 3rd stock exchange after Shenzhen and Shanghai has been dubbed by some as President Xi Jinping's pet project. It sets itself apart by focusing on small to medium enterprises, which the president calls little giants. It underpins his common prosperity policy aimed at closing China's wealth gap. It took only 74 days to set up, from its announcement in September, the fastest among the country's bourses. Stocks in 81 companies were traded in the first batch. 10 are newly listed firms, while the others were transferred from the capital's over-the-counter new third board. The 10 newcomers did well, posting hefty gains at closing, but 59 others fell. Trading in the shares of 3 firms was halted without explanation. More than 4 million investors have opened accounts to trade on the new exchange. Winna Wang, HKIBC.
And coming up after the break. Relief agencies comfort desperate migrants stranded on border between Poland and Belarus.